we got to talk about Jalen Brunson. We got to talk about this All-Star voting. We got to stop blaming Knicks fans for the reason why he's falling behind these players. Let me tell you the reason why he is falling behind these players. Jalen Brunson is the New York Knicks point guard, right? And he's also one of the most efficient and reliable players in the NBA. But he continues to fall behind in All-Star voting year after year, even when his numbers and his impact far outshine many of his peers. Now, despite leading his team with elite basketball IQ, clutch performances, unparalleled consistency, Jalen Brunson often finds himself overshadowed in fan voting by less productive yet more popular players. This trend raises a fundamental question for me. Why does someone as impactful as Jalen Brunson struggle to get the recognition he deserves from fans, especially those outside of New York? Now, to answer this, I'm telling you, I've been thinking about this for years. We're going to have to dive in and look at several factors. And we're going to include factors like anti-New York bias, the demographic dynamics of fan voting. We're going to talk about the young people, the social media generation's obsession with aesthetics and popularity. And we're also going to talk about the structural issues with the voting system itself. But let's start with the anti-New York bias. I've been talking about this for years. Being in the spotlight can be a double-edged sword. Knicks fans, New York City is the biggest stage in basketball, and the New York Knicks are one of the most iconic franchises in sports history, period. However, playing in New York often comes with an increased or heightened scrutiny. There's also an undercurrent of resentment against people who are from the big city, all right? There's a love and hate relationship with New York that people outside of New York have. I lived in Indiana for 7 years, I can tell you. The New York Knicks are synonymous with basketball culture, first and foremost. But they've also been a symbol of dysfunction for most of the past 2 decades. That includes a whole 2 decades of younger people coming up. Fans from other cities are tired of the constant media focus on New York when they haven't seen the production coming out of it. Regardless of our current performance, many may carry this implicit bias against New York Knicks and the players. So subconsciously, or even consciously, they go about downplaying the achievements that they make. Jalen Brunson, despite his undeniable contributions, is not immune to this bias. For voters, many of them might see his success as part of a larger Knicks narrative that they're reluctant to support. Period. I think also he can get overshadowed by the market perception. I talk all the time about Gilbert Arenas criticizing him. And while New York is a massive media market, its cultural dominance isn't as universal as it once was. Cable vision got rid of all of that. Fans from smaller markets now can feel a sense of solidarity with their own local stars. So voting for players who represent them over a Knick like Jalen Brunson, who is seen as part of a larger historically privileged system, let's call it for what it is not in their favor. That's not their cup of tea these days. So while we're talking about it, let's talk about the demographic of fan voting. Knicks fans get frustrated, start attacking other Knicks fans. Won't you vote more? The NBA's All-Star voting system puts significant power in the hands of fans. And the demographics of these voters play a pivotal role in shaping the results. It is not the New York Knicks fans' fault that Jalen Brunson is not being higher in rankings. The younger generation has influence. There is a significant portion of NBA fans engaging with All-Star voting who are younger and more active on social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Like, this demographic often prioritizes the flair and entertainment over substance. It's the look Instagram generation. If you look good, they vote for you. Highlight reels, flashy dunks, viral moments resonate more with these fans than efficiency, basketball IQ, or consistency, all of which define Jalen Brunson's game. And there's now even international fans and global superstars. The NBA has a massive international audience now, and players who appeal to this demographic often dominate all-star voting. So to give you an example, you have the Luka Doncic of the world with his European roots. You have Steph Curry. He's a global icon, and there are perennial fan favorites. Jalen Brunson, while highly skilled, doesn't yet have the international branding or marketing presence to compete with those stars. And just to kind of go back to the look, the aesthetic bias that's in modern basketball today, the whole focus is on the fit, style. In today's NBA, aesthetics often trump productivity when it comes to popularity. That's why LaMelo Ball, he's balling, but he's not enough. Players who consider fun to watch or possess a distinctive visual style are more likely to capture fan attention than those whose greatness lies in the subtlety, like Jalen Brunson's does. Jalen Brunson's efficient, but he is unflashy. His game is a masterclass in fundamentals. Look at the man's footwork. We watch his decision-making night in, night out. And he has a mid-range. He has precision with it. However, these are qualities that don't translate as well to the highlight reels. So NBA fans who watch games sporadically or consume content primarily through social media clips, they might miss the full scope of Jalen Brunson's brilliance. So when we think about those point guards, in contrast, players like Ja Morant or even Zion Williamson, they captivate audiences with explosive dunks and breathtaking athleticism. Even if their productivity is inconsistent or limited, their highlights dominate the conversation. And that pushes players like Brunson further into the shadows. There are young people who are voting who barely watch sports. But that's the thing to do. And this is the social media generation. And they have a short attention span. So in an era where 10-second clips can shape perceptions, Jalen Brunson's game requires a level of attention and appreciation that is increasingly rare. His brilliance lies in the moments that don't always show up on social media. When he's reading defenses and picking them apart, executing a perfect screen and roll, or calmly taking over in the clutch. These are plays that true basketball aficionados, of course, like Knicks fans are. We admire, but that casual fans often overlook. So now it becomes the popularity contest. What is the image versus the substance? So when we're talking about all-star voting is as much about a player's image and marketability as it is about their on-court contributions. Let's keep it 100. Jalen Brunson, while he's respected by his peers around the league, doesn't fit the mold of a modern NBA superstar in terms of branding. Now, he's doing his best in the market, and it's going to come. But right now, a lot of people claim that he has a lack of marketable persona. Jalen Brunson is low-key, he's a hardworking player, and he lets his game speak for itself. Now, while this approach is admirable, it doesn't always resonate in an NBA landscape dominated by big personalities and bold branding. This is why the NBA latches on to certain players like Joel Embiid or Damian Lillard, who combine elite play with memorable quotes or viral moments, even if those quotes and moments were from like 5 years ago. They have a leg up in fan voting. There is power in narrative. New York Knicks fans, we know that firsthand. In many cases, all-star voting reflects narratives rather than objective performance. A player like Kyrie Irving, despite his controversies, remains a fan favorite because of his established superstar status and his iconic moments. Jalen Brunson, who lacks those pre-existing narratives, struggles to break through the noise, even when his current level of play surpasses that of his peers. And that's the problem with the structure of the current system. There are issues with the current voting system. The all-star voting process itself may contribute to Brunson's underrepresentation in terms of his votes. We already have a problem with the game itself as well. But the fan voting weight has, for a number of years now, have been a problem of concern. Fan votes account for 50% of the All-Star starting lineup selection, with the remaining 50% split between players, the coaches, and the media. So this system is inherently favoring players with large fan bases, even if they aren't performing at an elite level. So when you think about where they are, whether it's international, certain parts of the country, there's geographic disparities. Now, some people will say, what you complaining for, you New York? While New York is a massive market, its fan base is diluted by the presence of other major teams in the area. I mean, how many fans is Brooklyn taking away from us? But when Kyrie and KD were here, they did. In contrast, players from smaller markets, they often benefit more from having a concentrated local support in terms of their votes. And then there's the log jams at the different positions. The guard position is one of the most competitive in the NBA. You got players like Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Donovan Mitchell, who dominate the conversation mostly. And that leaves little room for players like Brunson to gain traction, even if their production and their impact are comparable. We've seen that already in the number of years that he's gotten progressively more dominant being here in New York and still falling short. So let's look at moving forward. How does Jalen Brunson gain the recognition that he deserves? There's only a few ways that he can do so. While the factors that work against Brunson are numerous, there are ways that he can elevate his profile and then break through the barriers of all-star recognition. He's already starting to do it. With the team that we have, that chemistry and camaraderie, they're starting to build their own narrative. Brunson's clutch performances and his leadership are already going to highlight more aggressively. They already could be highlighted more aggressively by MSG. He's creating viral moments and crafting a comparative knowledge, around his journey. He has the Roommates podcast as well. So he's starting to engage with social media. Now, while Brunson isn't naturally flashy, emphasizing his craft through the detailed breakdowns and educational content, I don't know if that's necessarily him. But what him and Josh are doing on that show, and then bringing other players and different personalities, that's making a difference. And also Madison Square Garden and the Knicks are now starting to lock in and focus on that marketing piece. Nothing garners attention quite like winning though. And if the Knicks continue to rise in the standings as they're starting to do this year and make deep playoff runs, he may not get the benefits of it this year, but Brunson's role in that success will become impossible to ignore. And then moving forward, everyone wants to be synonymous with a winner. So a player for basketball purists is really what Jalen Brunson is. Can't do nothing about the All-Star voting really right now. It's not necessarily a reflection of his talent or his impact. It's a symptom of the system, and it prioritizes flash over substance, narratives over numbers, popularity over production. So in many ways, Jalen Brunson is a player for basketball purists. He's a throwback to an era where skill, intelligence, and efficiency was celebrated above everything else. And while his game might not capture the attention of casual fans right now, or the social media algorithm, it remains a testament to what makes basketball truly great. So as the NBA starts to evolve, the New York Knicks are going to be at the head of it. They already have a team that is built with skill and intelligence. So we hope that players like Jalen Brunson are now going to eventually get their due, if that'll be the way of the league. Until then, he's going to have to continue to let the game speak for itself, quietly, consistently, and brilliantly as he always has. And we just can't wait for the system to change. We just got to still do our best to get out and vote. I had to get on and just comment on that because although he's doing better than he has in years, there's still fans who are attacking other fans, holding us responsible for the numbers that we see. And I just wanted to say that there's more to that than just the numbers. So I want to thank you for checking this video.
Knicks Daily Edition.
This is your boy Sheer. Keep this in mind. The same thing applies to life that applies to our team. If there is no struggle, there's no progress. But also remember this: Whether it's out there in the real world or here in these YouTube streets, when you come to Knicks Deli, everybody eats.